folks, 7 o'clock. So especially if the elected officials in the room could cease their side conversations, maybe have some respect, just a little bit of respect. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is a joint meeting of the Programs and Services and Finance Committee. We have a few items on our agenda, but the main item is the school department's budget. Let me start by introducing who's here. From the Programs and Services Committee, I'm the chair. My name is Josh Krinsman, Councillor at Large from Ward 4. From Ward 1, we have John Oliver, Councillor at Large from Ward 1. We have David Mickley, Councillor from Ward 2. The Vice Chair of the Committee, Councillor Humphrey, is here from Ward 5. Alan Lobovitz is here from Ward 6. And Stephen Farrell, Councillor from Ward 8. Councillor Humphrey, do you want to introduce the members of the Finance Committee, maybe? I don't see, our chair will be arriving in a moment, and I see the vice chair just walking in, which is Julie Maliki, who's also a member of Programs and Services.
Well, in addition to me from Ward 4, we have the vice chair from Ward 3 and Councillor Greenberg from Ward 1, Councillor Grossman from Ward 7, Councillor Bixby from Ward 6, and you're not on it anymore, and you're on it. Ward 3, Councillor Mickley. No, 2, sorry. They're sitting next to each other. Sorry. Okay. Anybody else that I missed from this committee? No, I don't think so. So unless somebody's online that I didn't see.
Nope, I know that we're joined online by Councillor Tariq Lucas.
Yeah, okay.
And if others show up, I will try to remember, or maybe Katie will tell me, and we'll go from there. Just a reminder to folks that we are being audio and video recorded. And Councillor Baker, a member of the Programs and Services Committee, has joined us. Welcome, Councillor Baker. Oh, Councillor Susan Albright is here. I apologize, Councillor Albright. You're here as well, in person, in the flesh. Is she? Councillor Getz, my apologies. Councillor from Ward 5, Councillor Raina Getz. Let me read into the record the items. Again, I'll just sort of read both the CIP items and the budget, and then the one department on our agenda for discussion tonight is the school department, so we'll get into that. So the items are item 351-24, the submittal of the FY26 to FY30 capital improvement plan. Item 81-25, submittal of the FY26 municipal school operating budget. And item 82-25, submittal of the FY26 to FY30 supplemental capital improvement. There are two additional items on our agenda. They're both free cash items, but we will take those up later. My understanding is that the Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Yeo, and the CFO, Ms. Lemieux, will be here to answer questions. I don't see them yet, but perhaps they'll be here to answer. Sorry? Oh, Ms. Lemieux, sorry. It's like, where's Waldo out there? And I lost, so. Okay, great. We're also joined by Councillor Lenny Gentile, Chair of the Finance Committee, also Councillor at Large from Ward 4. Dr. Nolan and Chair Bresky are also here to answer questions. I don't believe we have any presentations tonight from anyone. So the information has been presented for the members of the committee. My understanding is that the last time we met, we did not have an official proposal from the mayor. The mayor has proposed a budget of $292,963,623. Sorry, $292,963,623. My other understanding is that the school committee has approved a budget of $296,352,258, which leaves a discrepancy of $3.388 million. Again, we have a free cash item on our agenda later, which could actually bring that discrepancy down to $2.2 million, give or take, depending on how it's calculated. My understanding is that there have been several discussions since we last met and since the middle of the budget, but I've been checking all day and I think we had no white smoke billowing from the City Hall chambers, so I believe there is still discrepancy. So with that said, I think what we'll do is I'll open it up to councilors to ask their questions, any debate. So let's get ready to, no.
Mr.
Are there any
Chairman,
questions from
Mr. Chair,
counselors?
Mr. Chairman.
Sure, Chair
I just,
Gentile.
did you, I wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of the votes that you and I are going to be calling for later on. You may have already.
I did not. Please go
All
ahead.
right. So what we're trying to get done tonight is we want to vote on the free cash item, the one that has a total amount, I think, of $1.17 million. We are going to hold the other item that was on the agenda, the $2.5 million of capital items for the school department from free cash. The first number that I mentioned, those are items that are designed to support the 2026 budget. So we want to vote on that before we ask you to vote on the mayor's allocation. We do want to get at least a vote from each committee so that we can recommend that to the committee of the whole. Josh and I both expect that there'll be a significant amount of discussion on the school budget at the committee of the whole. So we would like each committee at least to make a recommendation with a vote tonight. So that's the plan. Plans have a way of changing in this chamber, but that's the plan, at least for now.
With that, let me open it up for question. You mentioned a $2.5 million item, but I think that's not on the agenda for tonight anyway.
It was added. It was supposed to have been added. If
It's what? Oh, it's in public facilities. So it's not on our agenda tonight.
okay, well, that makes it even easier.
So done. All right, so if there are no questions, does anyone want to make a motion? I mean, where are we at here? Well, let me ask this. There were some questions that had been asked by folks last time. Did folks receive sufficient answers to those questions? There were questions about, for example, budgets of surrounding communities and what their allocation was. Do folks feel like they got their answers on things like that? Councilor Mickley.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I just for two items, one for more detailed information on special needs programs and also for information on the cell phone policy. And the superintendent was very prompt and thorough in sharing some very useful information. So thank you, Dr. Nolan, for that. There's a lot more for us to digest on that, but it's helpful for us to have that added information. So thank you.
Okay. I'll ask one question. Maybe this might be a question for you, Ms. Lemieux. Since the mayor proposed her budget, the state has moved further along in their budget process. As part of our budget and as part of the mayor's proposal, she counts on a certain amount of general unrestricted government aid, unrestricted general government assistance, and Chapter 70 funds. Chapter 70 funds, of course, are dedicated specifically to the schools. My understanding is that the most recent numbers, which came from the Senate Ways and Means Committee, the Senate hasn't debated their budget or finalized it yet, but those numbers don't usually go down. The Senate Ways and Means budget proposal actually comes in at $900,000 more than what the mayor had counted on in her budget. So I guess my question is, are you aware of that? And does that change anything or free up some money to possibly bridge the gap here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It does not change things today, but we are aware of it. The House actually increased Chapter 70 2 or 3 weeks ago. And then, as you mentioned, the Senate actually came out, it was either Monday or Tuesday this week, with concurring with the number that the House had moved forward. So that certainly is very promising. What the mayor is, we're referring to it as if, then. So what we're thinking of is if the city does not prevail in the case with the kindergarten aides, and if the Chapter 70 money holds through the end of the budget process at the state level, then the mayor will be very happy to fund the 836 that had been carried for the kindergarten aides. Those aides at the moment have been taken out of the school department's budget by the school committee back in their vote. But clearly, it's still out there as a contingency needing potential funding if the city loses the case. And so that's where that money would come from if we lose the case, and as long as that money stays in the state budget.
Okay, so I just want to repeat back to you to make sure I'm understanding. Maybe other folks are understanding quicker than I am. The almost $900,000 for additional kindergarten aides is a potential need if the court case does not go the way the city wants it to go or the way the school department is counting on it going. The school committee did not include that money in their budget. They understand that it's a possible risk and a contingency to set aside, but that is not represented in the discrepancy between the mayor's proposed budget and what the school committee has approved.
Correct. It is no longer, it was originally, it is no longer part of the discrepancy.
Okay, so just one sort of further, the proposed mayor's use of that additional $900,000 does not actually bridge the gap at all.
Correct.
Okay, sorry, Chair Bresky.
Thank you, Chair Krinsman. If I could just share my perspective on that, speaking for myself and not for the committee. If there is an incremental $900,000 of Chapter 70 funding, which I believe would be wholly appropriate to allocate that money to the school department, I believe it is the obligation of the school committee to determine the use of those funds.
And we have some questions. I did it. Okay, let's go with Councillor Albright, followed by Bixby, followed by Humphrey. Councillor Albright.
Mr. Chairman, can you just get a little closer to the mic when you speak?
Yes, are folks more interested in hearing me? I'd be happy to get closer. Yes, I will. My apologies. Councillor Albright.
Thank you. So I just have a small circuit breaker question for you. So it says in the FY26 budget, I think that's the carry forward is the $3,350,000. Is that right? So how do you determine how much money gets carried forward into the following year?
May I share a visual, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely. Go ahead. Yes, you may.
Better and better.
We had several questions from our city council partners about the use of circuit breaker and carry forward. So I'm going to put on my head teacher hat and I'm going to give it a whirl on how that all works. So circuit breaker is a mechanism that's available to schools only for special education funding. So it is only those portions of the budget that we are talking about. This is an overview of all the parts of the budget that go into the decision around use of circuit breaker funding and this thing called a carry forward, which in Newton at this time is used each year to balance a subsequent year's budget. This is not a standard budgeting practice, and I think even Ms. Lemieux would agree, this isn't a place we want to continue to be, trying to save money in one fiscal year to carry it through to another. It is very common in the Commonwealth since COVID because grant fundings were used and deployed that sometimes helped budgets and meant that there was excess surplus at the end of a school year. It did help districts prepay special ed tuitions by saving money that they would have spent on special ed in this year and moving it to a subsequent year. So if you look across the Commonwealth since COVID, there's been more of that. But it is not a standard budgeting practice. So here's how it works. I broke it down into parts. So special ed budget for the Newton Public Schools is composed of first our operating allocation. So what is given to us from the city and the portions that we put towards special education. Special education is composed of parts called out of district tuition. So that's students who cannot be served by the Newton Public Schools. And so we send them out for a tuition that is set by an outside division, Office of OSD. If you recall, for those of you who've been doing this a while, a few years ago, that 1 year increase in out-of-district tuitions was 14% in 1 year. It's typically been 2 to 3. Recently, it's been 3 to 5. So that out-of-district tuition line is the first place we would use from operating. Then there's special ed transportation. So those students who go to places out of the district have to be transported there by us. So there's the second part of expenses. The third that we spend on is special education aids. And the fourth is special ed contracted services. This is a variety of different aspects. It could be needs that we cannot address in the system. It could be hiring additional folks to deliver speech and language services. So it's a wide variety of services that we have to address, augmenting what our own staff can do. So the first place that we spend is Newton operating funds. Then we look at, were there any savings from the prior year? So that is, for example, let's say there was a teacher position we could not hire in a given year. And so the salary for that individual and how long that person was unable to be rehired, that becomes the equivalent of free cash for the school system, and it might be surplus at the end of the year. Circuit breaker is like an account that can be used for 1 year. You can hold that money only 1 year, and you have to spend it within that year. So it's not this slush fund that the school gets to just keep building up an empire and gets to spend it willy-nilly. It may only be used on special ed, and there's a 1 year expiration date on anything that's put into it. So after we look at any savings from the prior year, we get reimbursed from the state. Unfortunately, we are reimbursed for the prior year's services, and it is put into the circuit breaker for this year. So sometimes it's more than we are spending in the given year. Sometimes it's less than in the given year. So questions that counselors have asked: last year, we were able to address $5 million of carry forward money because we were reimbursed at a higher rate from the previous year than we were in this year. So it creates a surplus, which we put right back into the special education budget for the subsequent year. The problem for us right now is that we are having to freeze the current budget this year. We just did it in the Newton Public Schools for FY25 in order to meet a now notified target of $3.5 million for next year. Because we really try to bring our budget in right on schedule. We hire the right number of people, we pay them what we said we were going to pay them. Sometimes there are things that come up, and sometimes there are savings. So we try to bring it in right at the line, but if we don't, we're going to put that in circuit breaker and we're going to carry it forward to the next year so we can pay down the bills for the next year. The problem is that we are counted on to do that to many millions of dollars each year now. It's not a nice to have, it's a must do. And so for us this year, in order for us to hit those marks, we are worried, especially since state reimbursements this year have been set at a much lower rate than the promised 75% reimbursement from the state. So we spend $5, the state is supposed to reimburse us 75% of that. This year, that number is not there for tuition reimbursement. And then there's another percentage set for transportation, which is at 75%. Oh, sorry, transportation's at 40, tuition's at 75%. Either way, we're not getting the full amount back that we have expended. So the use of funding goes to out-of-district tuitions, the special ed transportation, the special ed aids, and contracted services. So that's all it can be used for. So just to show you that the end of the year balance that we're anticipating this year is $922,000. So that's savings that we've realized in this year for a variety of reasons. But we were over on our special education budget because of emergency needs for transport by $8,880. So too were we over by special education aids to the tune of $194,240. Things like move-ins, people who've moved in that we didn't know were going to move in. And this is a good use of savings in the budget that Liam and I don't have to come back to city council and say we had some move-ins and we couldn't afford the aids for those individuals. That may happen sometime in the future. And I have had to do that in my role previously. We also saved $122,000 roughly in our use of contracted services, which means we needed it less than we budgeted. So that means that we believe that there's a carry forward for next year of $841,707. Unfortunately, right now, we have to save an additional 2.5 million on top of that to meet how we said we would balance the budget. That is the level services plus budget. So this is not to be confused with any other 2.5 million number. This is the number that the Newton Public Schools has to save between now and the end of the year from our current allocation for FY25 in order to balance the budget for FY26.
Could I just ask you, do you have to save it in the 4 categories where the money is allowed to be spent?
That's a great question. No, you don't. But what we do is with those monies we save, we pay other special ed expenses and it frees up that money to be used in the circuit breaker.
Okay. So right now in next year's budget, we're everyone, the mayor and the city council, and you are counting on the carryover money to make your budget whole. That's without the $2.2 million gap, but you're counting on that 3.3 million to make your budget whole.
In addition, we are being asked to also count turnover savings, meaning the expectation that we will hire less expensive folks in the district than we have in the past. This is what keeps your superintendent up at night. It's really hard to consider that many millions of savings from the current budget because I don't want to starve the current year and the needs of folks right now.
I see. Thank you very much.
You all set, Councilor Albert? Okay, Councilor Bixby?
Thank you. So to recap the other $2.5 million numbers, so we continue to have an approximately $2.5 million gap, and we continue to have a $2.5 million free cash allegation for what Councilor Kalis eloquently said last time was inanimate objects versus animate people. I continue to feel like it would be fantastic if we could figure out how to put that into a mechanism that we have, the Education Stabilization Fund, and then get it to the schools for what the school committee and superintendent need. I'm assuming that you've been spending the past few weeks exploring every angle here. So are there any solutions that have bubbled up that might not be apparent to us at this moment, or other sort of creative angles to accomplish that goal of getting it to what the priorities that you have for this year and to keep our families and students and teachers, doing what they need?
So let me just check. Is that a question for Dr. Nolan, a question for Ms. Lemieux or Mr. Yo, or?
Anybody who wants to answer, I guess, but let's start with Dr. Nolan.
Okay. Dr. Nolan? you wanna
Bake
take
sales.
start?
No, I'm kidding. So I, look with hope towards Chapter 70 increases. I understand though, and, the mayor has shared her concern, and what keeps her up at night is certainly the whole landscape when you add in Medicare and child nutrition and all the other saber rattling that's going on at the federal level. She's concerned that that may not come to fruition. I am hopeful that it will. My professional agency has really been advocating for that, as has the Mass Teachers Association and the Newton Teacher Association. Everyone has been advocating for them. Your school committee association, everyone. So that's one piece. I guess I would say another suggestion, and that I do not speak for the school committee, and these are ideas that have been brought forward, is that there are items within our current budgeted operating budget charter maintenance account that are one-time funds. So things we know we are going to have to replace that are not ongoing recurring expenses that approach, $1.7 million. Perhaps we could get that higher if we continue to look. But there's a danger to doing that, to subbing out operating funds with free cash funds, just as the 1.17 that you're going to consider tonight and the healthcare money that you approved recently. All those 1 million pieces then mean that next year I will be standing before you asking for the operating budget to fund the budget plus those millions that you took out last year. And then it could be said that I am asking for an inappropriate percent increase for the budget next year because I am both trying to fund the current year and take the holes that we took out last year and add them to this budget. So there, I've said that on camera because I'm worried about that. You know, it's certainly wonderful that there was no question that the health insurance was going to be paid by free cash, but that has to be voted into the school budget and funded next year. It's not going away as a liability. So that's the downside of that. It is an option. And if that's something that is, amenable to the committee and to the mayor, then I certainly would explore that option.
Ms. Lemieux or Mr. Yo, did either of you want to? No? Okay. Counselor Bixby, you all set?
I have some other questions later, but let's.
Okay. Are you looking to weigh in on this, Counselor Gentile? Is that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
To further respond to Councilor Bixby's question, the reason that I wanted to make sure that we were not taking up the $2.5 million of capital improvement items tonight is I personally would like to see that remain in play as a possible means of narrowing the gap. And I think you're in agreement that we didn't want to take that up tonight, and that's the reason why.
Okay. Counselor Bixby, all set?
I guess my other question is on timeline. So what do we need to, I mean, and I appreciate that. And I think we all hope, or many of us, I hope that we can figure this out. What do we need to do in terms of timeline and letting staff know and all that?
So it's very hard to continue to go this late in May without being able to tell our staff something definitive or to tell parents definitively who the teaching staff are in their buildings. We have a June 15th contractual deadline to let our staff know where they will be assigned for next year. So within the next 2 weeks, those teachers and educators that we have already had to pink slip need to be told if they are working here or not. And that's quite a bit of people. So we can't do it in one day.
Thanks. And I guess my final question, in a note on responding to some of the budget stuff after last meeting, you mentioned advocating for this cohort of kids and the COVID cohort and having a child who began his school career with that. Can you just, again, I mean, I know I talked to many of my colleagues about it. We all hear about it. Can you just give a moment to that particular issue a little bit more?
So I hope the community sees this as what our mission is a week from now, trying to have a forum with our teachers to actually tell that story for folks. What's it like teaching right now? We've been asked a lot by our parents and by especially folks who don't have kids in the schools. So what's the big deal about it at all now? Why is it so expensive? Why is it so complex? And, certainly I can tell you what I have seen, but I wasn't in this district for the last several years. And I would like our teachers to be able to tell that. What I can say at a high level is it's one of the most complex times in educational history. And the isolation plus the lack of academics in a systematic way and the influx of social media and technology into students' lives that were not necessarily mediated by the school experience really means that our young people have additional executive functioning issues, more dysregulation. We are seeing more social issues. I'll use my own children who were in school during COVID. My son's 22, he feels 17 to me. And there's just an immaturity and a lack of experience. When we talk about that building rigor that our system has been able to do in the past, it has been shaken severely by the COVID crisis and subsequent financial issues. So there's been this big scenario, and I did not see the same support resources deployed for the schools using ESSER and ARPA funds in the same way that I saw it across the rest of Metro West. Short-term intervention staff, mental health counselors deployed for a short period of time and then phased gradually out of the budget. That is what the rest of Metro West was talking about during this time period. We are a little behind the eight ball, and I just feel this deep urgency for those young people to get them what they need before they head to the next level of schooling.
I'll just say thank you for that then, and thanks for all the answers.
All right, thank you. No, I'm sorry. Please, no applause. Please let us get through the debate tonight. Please hold your applause. Hold your applause until the end. Counselor Humphrey.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, could I just add something about the 2.5 million? Because it is on the public facilities budget for May 14th. All the free cash items coming to public facilities are on that agenda, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be passed. It could well be held. Just wanted to say that.
Okay. Yeah, there was a free cash item on the Programs and Services Committee agenda last night, and that was held as well. So, Counselor Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate what you were just talking about. Again, I think that was kind of the issue that I was getting at last week, that there's been a kind of unusual level of resistance to even brief surges of funding for acute intervention on some of these issues. But I also wanted to talk about sort of the base budget issue that you did bring up a few minutes ago. We actually had a conversation about this in a different finance meeting since our last big one of these meetings, around the insurance issue that you mentioned. Because I asked, well, so what's the plan for next year? You know, it happened that we got this increase after the budget was, or the numbers were sort of done for this year. And so then we're, I guess, solving it with free cash for this year. But then the question that I raised was, okay, so is that getting taken out of somewhere else next year, or because the cost isn't going to go down? And the answer, you know, is that, well, obviously it partly varies depending on, you know, it's going to be a new administration, so they can make new decisions, but that probably the recommendation would be to adjust the base budget from this year to to basically add that on top and then increase beyond that. And to my mind, then I couldn't, and I asked about this in that meeting, I couldn't figure out then what the difference was in terms of using the one-time funds for that purpose and baking that into the future base budget versus, you know, other things that we've talked about potentially taking a similar approach. So I don't know if you had any comment on that, and then I had some further specific questions.
Yeah, so that dynamic you're talking about, Counselor Humphrey, is absolutely correct. That historically, as over the last several years, as the NPS budget has been partly supplemented by free cash items or, you know, one-time funds, those always haven't been included in the budget, even though they are recurring items. At our last school committee meeting, this did come up briefly. And my view, and I said this publicly at our meeting, was that I believe whatever final budget the school committee votes through, assuming it changes from here, needs to include that $1.3 million in it, in our approved budget. And to the extent there's other one-time funds coming in to fund recurring items, that needs to be included in our budget as well. So we don't have this system where we have expenses and funding living outside the walls of our budget. So when a percentage is applied the following year, it's applied to a lower number than it should be. So it's my hope the committee will vote through the true funding needs of the system.
Okay, that makes sense.
I just want to give Ms. Lemieux a chance to respond to that as well. Were you going to move on to another question?
Respectfully, Mr. Chair, she did respond at quite some length in that finance meeting. So, I mean, if you have something new, let me know, but.
I would just like to clarify what I said in the finance meeting.
Okay.
I did not say that we would probably be doing that. I don't even know if I will be part of the next administration. I said a possibility would be that the next administration would add that to the base and then gross it up from there. I was very careful that night not to say that that's what I would expect would happen. I just want to make sure that's very clear to everybody. I have no idea what the next administration will do.
Yes, I think that I mentioned that a few minutes ago and said that that was addressed, that it's going to
Microphone.
be potentially a new administration, but that would be a probable likely recommendation from whoever is making those decisions. In any case, I'll stipulate that point. Mr. Bresky, though, I wanted to go back to the overall issue of the base number, again, that's whether we're talking about 3.5 or 4, or whatever the increase is, that's always happening on a sort of base number each year. Some people have contended in recent years, and I'm curious to get your assessment on this, that the base number, for a variety of reasons, is actually much lower than where it should be if we were consistently accounting the same way each year. A specific example, when there was the move to take some of the OPEB stuff over to the other side, which was intended as a cost control measure over a longer period of time because that was growing very rapidly. That money that was pulled out that year was not then replaced with anything else in that base. So then that means it's essentially a lower base for the next year's growth. So there's a number of other examples along similar lines, but is your take that the base number should already be higher by probably several $1 million from where it is on paper right now?
I would say, to the extent we are funding recurring items in the budget off the books of NPS, both the expense and the funding, then yes, we are understating what is the actual cost of operating our schools. So, and that has happened, regularly over the last several years. I don't have the exact number offhand to know the magnitude to give to you at
Dr.
this
Nolan, you
moment.
had some thoughts on that?
Well, I just want to say, because there were a few questions from counselors about the slide I showed last time about allocations from cities and towns in Metro West, and how I backed into that number because those individuals couldn't back into all the numbers and the percentages. And I would say good luck to you, because none of us can. And I wanted to just say why. So I called all the superintendents in Metro West and I said, when you and your city leadership talk about percentages, what is the breakdown? And that is what I reported to you. So what they believe the breakdown is. So I'm going to just say to you that the reason that this is hard to know, and even in this budget season, it's been hard for me to follow how things are addressed here in the city, because how districts file their end of the year financials and their end of the year report varies widely. I'll give you one example. There's about 50 million other ones, but instructional technology staff can be filed as library, teachers, technology staff. It can be filed in 10 different places in a different end of the year report. And so you can't line up budgets and say it's apples to apples everywhere. So it's really hard to figure it out. Health benefits and OPEB costs are not typically included in school budgets in the same way they have been in Newton. So that's a sort of a new rub. And then OPEB benefits were taken out, and that had an impact in terms of the budget. It's positive and not positive over time. Many districts have stabilization funds, transportation, capital, technology, special ed, that may or may not be included in the overall percent allocations that districts report, right? So you've heard numbers thrown out here about how we're X percent of the budget or Y percent of the budget, depends on what you roll into it. If we count every part of the sewer and water, our roads being plowed, the SROs, different allocations like that, that changes. So I think we need to agree as a city and school, like what's in the budget and not, to Chris's point, because we can't like change it mid-budget season. And also, are we rounding up like it's a 4% allocation that the school got this year, or is it 3.65%, right? These are things that we need to be rock solid on, because the public is confused and I want them to trust us. And so those are the types of things that muddy that percentage. But in case you don't want to hear from me and Liam and the superintendents in Metro West, we did go to the DLS website, which is where they take the numbers from, they take the numbers from everybody's end of the year reports, and they're publicly available. We didn't make these up. So education as a percent of total expenditure. So we're not outspending other schools. Our allocation is not the same as other schools. It's different. there it is. This is where we stand within the sector in terms of our general fund expenditures. To say, is that enough or not enough? All I can tell you is we can't continue to fund critical things like curriculum and professional development through free cash offerings. Because if my staff and I need to depend on that so that we are training the staff to be the best they can be. And it's not only when cash is available. So that's just one area. I mean, special ed tuitions have been funded through free cash over the last couple of years and then not. That hole is still there. Health insurance, these are the types of things. Substitute costs, we can't pretend what it costs. We have to say what it costs. So those are the things. So if you want to see a per capita education spending, this is where we are from the DLS and where we stand. And this is a function of what's available revenue, right? This is not manufactured by anyone. This is where we have been over time. But I'm just sharing it with you because we want the results that other districts get, and we want that type of experience for our young people. We have to understand where we are in the landscape. And it's my job to bring forward what we actually need and also be real about what it costs. So I appreciate that question. Maybe it's not exactly the question that you had, but this is how I try to think, because I don't want to ask for more money than is reasonable. And I don't want to ask for things that aren't backed, in terms of our larger state ecosystem. We're just in a difficult spot trying to catch up in some areas and then trying to paint a thriving vision for the future. And so I'm stuck between those two things.
And I would acknowledge that certainly it is challenging to compare across communities. I can kind of hear in my mind, Councillor Gentile's probably thinking about all the services that many of those communities provide or don't provide rather, that Newton does provide on the city side. And a lot of our residents consider those to be very important. But that was part of why I was kind of focusing in on the baseline allocation number from year to year, because again, some people have looked at the numbers and felt like that in certain years it didn't go up by the claimed percentage that it was going up, or that something happened that then caused it to go down, or at least appear to go down. I mentioned the OPEB one. I think, it's definitely been debated, but there was some questions around the increases or lack of increases in relative terms related to the I guess it would be FY21 and the end of FY20 when the pandemic first started, and whether or not some of that money got replaced subsequently. Certainly it didn't seem to get replaced, as you mentioned, in the way that some other communities replaced that lost revenue for interventions. And then the third point, and this is, I want to say, not a question, because I think none of you can really answer it, given that it's a ongoing legal thing. So I'll just make a comment. We've heard a few times about the kindergarten aides issue, and I guess I can say, because I'm on the city council side, I am not a lawyer, I have no information on the case or whatever. I'm very concerned about that and the sort of budget planning around that. It seems unlikely to me, just speculatively, that we would win that case. I don't know. Maybe I'm not up on all the legal arguments. Setting aside legal arguments, it seems like a pretty strange hill to die on, because it seems like we probably want to have kindergarten aides in every classroom. And I think,
and folks, please, no applause. Please, no applause.
I think
please don't applaud.
Most people that I have talked to out in the wider public who aren't following this stuff super closely just say, well, of course you should. That it doesn't make any sense the way that we're doing it. And again, that's separate from any legal arguments. And it's just like, why not just resolve this budgetarily? And again, part of the reason that I'm bringing this up is not just that I'm nervous about it, but also that is the third big example that gets cited of, hey, the baseline was supposed to be increased at some point several fiscal years back to account for that. It wasn't. And now the baseline is lower than where it should be when we're talking about our projected annual percentage increases. Again, that's not a question, because I know you can't get into it with ongoing litigation, but I just wanted to put it out there as a comment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Humphrey. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I heard the beginning of the meeting and then where the Chair of Finance indicated his sort of plan. I want to try and make sure I understand where we are, though, as a matter of committee process. We're all in straw votes tonight. There's nothing that's binding on the full council.
In terms of the budget, that's correct.
Yeah, in the budget. And so the question that hear, and I want to make sure I hear it correctly, I don't hear a dissent among members of the committee that the base number that is before us that the mayor has recommended should be voted. The question is, what about the gap? How to close the gap, right? And then we have a recommendation from the mayor to use funds for the health program, the health expenses that have been articulated. And I don't hear any dissent that that fund should be voted. And that's what I heard from the chair of finance. So
I think that item's already approved.
yeah, but in other words, there's no question about that. The question, as I hear it, is what to do about the gap, which at the moment is 2.5, as you articulated it earlier, roughly in that order of magnitude.
Well,
And-
potentially, there's one item on the agenda later, which would, if approved, would bring the gap to about $2.2 million.
Right, but that's, I assume that item we're agreed is, I don't hear any dissent for voting that. I mean, it's going to be later in the conversation, but so the question really is the big difference, which does not include the kindergarten aides. It doesn't include the risk of federal cuts. There are a bunch of contingent liabilities out there that are not covered in any of this. And we've all been worried about all of those, I think. And Councilor Humphrey just articulated part of the concern about the kindergarten matter. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that I would not want to be in a situation of not approving what we can for the schools. And the question of before the committee, as I hear it, ultimately will be, do we support beyond the indicated amounts you've indicated we would support, the mayor's request to use free cash for capital expenses, or do we hold those and take that up and hope that some resolution occurs? But ultimately, at the full council, we've got to decide what to do with that money, right? I mean, either that money is available to the schools for the stated purpose that the mayor has indicated, or the mayor changes her mind and the school committee is given an additional amount. That's separate and apart from all the question of what is the base and what's in the budget. I think we're just trying to figure out what we as a council vote for and when. So I guess what I would not want to be in a position of doing is not indicating support that these funds, to the extent they're available from free cash, are made available to the schools. The question that is narrowly before us, I think, is do we wait until another meeting of the full council to decide whether to vote the money as the way the mayor has recommended those funds be spent, or do we say no to those and hope somehow the mayor will change her mind and the schools don't get the funds for capital or operating expense? That would seem to me an unfortunate outcome, but I want to make sure I understand what our choices are. So can you clarify a little bit for me of where we are procedurally? Because I would like to see us take the votes we can to support the schools tonight. But then the question is, what do we do about this delta that is a significant number, even after you take the vote that we need to take on the unanticipated health costs?
Yeah, fair question. Councilor Gentile, do you want to weigh in on that before I do?
Please. So as we do every year, we ask that the substantive committee, no matter what department of the city it is, that when you conclude your review, that you take a straw vote. It'll be in our budget book and it'll be reported out to the committee of the whole. So I'm merely suggesting and asking that we do that tonight, this being the second night of the review of the school budget. I don't expect there to be a lot of support for the mayor's number, but we need to take a position on it, including abstaining. So then it will go to the committee of the whole, which is starting up in roughly a week. I expect that there will be one, if not several resolutions to increase the allocation. And we'll discuss that in committee of the whole. We'll vote on whatever resolutions come forward on the school budget, as we will with every other department. Those resolutions will go to the mayor. The mayor will respond and we'll go from there. It's the same thing we've done every year.
I understand that. I guess what I would like to see is vote the mayor's allocation at least. I don't want to be in a situation of not voting that. I don't see the reason not to vote that tonight and at least try and close, see what we can do to close the gap in the next few days.
Let me just finish up. That we are planning on calling for a vote of the mayor's allocation. You may vote for it. I don't think there's a lot of people in this room that are going to vote for it because I think that they want to send the message that the schools should receive more money. Now, maybe I'm misreading the room, but we'll see. But we need to take a vote. And again, this will be resolved in committee of the whole, when the full council is there.
Councilor
Well,
Baker.
just speaking for myself, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm prepared to support the mayor's allocation with the opportunity to do better for it. Others may prefer not to vote for that, but I just want to indicate where I am. I'm supportive of the schools, but I don't want to be in a position of not supporting what at least the mayor has allocated.
Yep, and I think you will have that opportunity tonight. Councilor Humphrey?
Yeah, just commenting from a procedural standpoint, again, given the experience that we had 3 years ago, I think in here, it's going to be a straw vote. You can vote however you want. It has no effect one way or the other. It's going to the full council process next, whether we vote it up, down, or everyone abstains. It's going to go on just as it would, a negative vote in a normal committee item. It's going to go on to the next part of the process. The next part of the process is where it's a little bit higher stakes in that if we were to vote no on the allocation, that would automatically reduce it to the state minimum, which I don't think is what we want. And last time we did that, we ended up having to re-vote it and all vote yes on the thing we had all just voted, or half of us had voted no on, in order to not accidentally defund the school system. So for me personally, in that phase of it, I'm probably inclined to abstain this time around, knowing that that's procedurally how it works now, because I don't want to, cut it down to the state minimum. But, and I think voting no at that point is, functionally not sending the same message. Here, I don't think it matters. If people want to vote no, it has no effect one way or the other. And, and I don't think there's any reason necessarily to keep it here, but, perhaps Councilor Grossman or somebody else disagrees. I don't know, but that I'm just laying out procedurally that that's what the situation is.
Councilor Grossman?
Thank you. I'm sorry if you see me leaping out of my chair. It's because as this conversation is going on, I'm just getting more and more worked up on my feelings on this issue. This is my 8th time through this. I know that pales in comparison to Councilor Baker and Councilor Gentile. But I honestly cannot believe that 8 years into this, every year, we are finding ourselves in this position of doing both financial and procedural gymnastics to try to get to a number that appropriately funds our schools. We all say out there.
All right, folks, please hold your applause. Please hold your applause. Understand where everyone's at, but we do have to get through this.
I can't think of a single person who has run for one of these offices that since the time that I've been involved in this, who hasn't had their number one issue and their number one priority be the education of our children. I still believe that it is the most prized value that we have in this community. And the idea that we would talk about laying off teachers when it has been so clearly laid out in the weeks, months, and even years leading up to this, that our kids are in crisis and they need our support. We are literally talking about.
Please hold your applause, please.
We are literally talking about funding at the superintendent's level, the bare minimum. I said in the last meeting, I wish it was the higher number. I would rather not have our trash picked up every week than lay off teachers. Honestly.
Folks,
I'm going to try to simplify this as much as I can because Councilor Humphrey's right. What we vote tonight is literally a statement. The mayor knows how we feel. I've told the mayor directly how I feel. I know many of the others here have as well, and certainly the members of the audience have, and I thank you for being here and for your ongoing commitment. But honestly, the sign in the back says it. Just fund it, fully fund it. So I would like to make a motion for a straw vote in favor of the superintendent's budget. Should you increase that number as the school committee goes forward to incorporate the healthcare costs or appropriately adjust the base. I support that too. We're going to get to the committee of the whole. There's going to be tons of confusion and lots of procedural, what are we going to try this year to get the number appropriate gymnastics? And I'll engage in that too. And I'm perfectly willing to hold on appropriate free cash items. I don't know that we can hold every single one because some of them, truly are important and time sensitive, but others aren't. But there is no way you're going to find me voting for flooring and theater curtains over teachers. So motion for a straw vote in favor of the superintendent's budget, and quite honestly, anything else you tell me you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grossman. That sounds like it is. Appreciate it, folks. Thank you. That very specifically is a motion in the Finance Committee, because that's the committee that Councilor Grossman's on. So I'll leave that to Councilor Gentile to manage in just a moment. Let me come to Councilor Albright.
So I hate to come back to the mundane after that, because it was well done and well said. But there is something that I wanted to ask, because I've had a lot of people question. So back in the day when I went to school, class sizes were larger. And even I would say 20 years ago, when my kids were in school, the class sizes were getting smaller, but not as small as maybe they are in the budget or projected to be. What I would like you to explain to everybody who may not understand why we need class sizes of the size that you're projecting. Why is it? What has changed about the way we do education that requires us to have smaller class size? I know that's a huge question, but if you can simplify it for people who don't understand why smaller class sizes today and the way we're doing education are important.
May I share?
Dr. Nolan, please. And then we'll get back to procedure. Don't worry.
So first, I just want to say that back in the day when you were in school, school committees were autonomous and they were not bound by Proposition 2.5. So when there was a bubble of need, so let's say COVID had happened then, school committees could come to their cities and towns and they would be able to ask for the appropriation that they needed. And there were not limitations on dollars available. So too in Newton, there wasn't the available dollar, there wasn't the retirement obligations there are now. So parents are being squeezed and taxpayers are being squeezed right now for the same services that you would have received. I do want to say that there are just a ton of unfunded mandates also. I'm just looking for my unfunded mandate slide here. So good news is that students who were not able to matriculate to public schools even 20 years ago are with us now. Students with complex and multiple disabilities, but also students with social emotional needs who don't have special education. And I will tell you that that number since COVID has dramatically increased. The number of students who purport that they would like to do harm to self or others. And I think we read about those when they go wrong in the news. This district tries to proactively get in front of those types of mental health issues. I also just want to say that from curriculum expectations to attendance officers to assistive technology staff to required digital learning certifications, board certified behavior analysts, we have medication we have to administer now that we didn't have to do then. Our exponential amount of students with diabetes that we treat has gone from like 3% to 58% over the last 10 years. Schools are now the largest food service provider in the town. You went home for lunch, right? The largest transportation provider, the largest mental health provider. We are the provider for many services for students. We have students who are multilingual and come from the country and have never had schooling, and they're in 8th grade. Those students did not necessarily matriculate to public schools before. They came here, they went into the world of work. My grandparents are examples of that. So we are serving more students. We take all comers. We're not like a private school. We take everyone who comes. So there's that complexity and expense. And I would also just say that the expectation for us is higher. Massachusetts is the premier place to attend public school in the nation. And we are at the top of that heap in Newton. And the expectation when families move here is there's public school and then there's Newton Public Schools. And we want to deliver on that promise because we are that excellent and that doesn't come cheaply. Right now, I'm advocating to you that we cannot teach the way we used to teach. Students are not wired that way. The world of work is not wired that way. This is not students neatly sitting in rows of 30 people. They can't do it. That's not what the world of work is like. We are not training students for a factory model. We are training students to be dynamic thinkers, problem solvers, to be hands-on and project-based. And that requires smaller class sizes. Seeing those class sizes of lab sciences at South High School of 30 students is dangerous. And so we're doing real science with our kids, but we can't do it if we can't fit the kids in the class to do the science. And that is the story that I observed as your new superintendent. So it is that mix of all those complexities that makes schooling more expensive than it has been before.
Could I just add to that? So back in the 70s, when my work at the time was planning statewide services for the developmentally disabled. And at that time, we had 5 or 7 state schools for the mentally retarded. That's what they were called. They were all over the state. Thousands of people went from their homes when they were born into state schools, and they stayed there through their life. Those state schools are all closed.
Correct.
Those kids now come to public schools. And they haven't gone away. They didn't disappear. They are still born and they still have needs and they come through the public schools. And people really need to understand that the population in the public schools has changed tremendously. And I hope people who question the need for smaller class sizes will get over it because we have a very complex set of kids in our schools now. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, ladies and gentlemen, please just hold your applause until I say something brilliant, okay? Councilor Gentile.
So I just want to get back to process for a minute, and at the risk of giving Councilor Grossman additional agita, I just want to remind everyone, don't shoot the messenger, but we have a charter that we live by. And the superintendent's budget is not in front of us to vote on. It's the mayor's budget. Now, what I would suggest we could do is we could take a vote on the mayor's proposed allocation for the schools. And I would think that in committee, a resolution's in order. So if you also wanted to, after we take that vote, if you wanted to offer a resolution to increase the funding that we approve to the superintendent's allocation, I think that that would be in order. But I would ask that we do it that way rather than voting on something technically isn't in front of us.
Yep, and
I would
I was
concur.
actually going to say the exact same thing in programs and services, so we may even be able to do it sort of jointly or get the same motions in both committees. But let me come back to Councilor Grossman, who made her motion. So Councilor Grossman.
Well, first of all, I just want to be clear, that's your understanding as well, Chair Krinsman?
So
that-
my understanding is that, at least traditionally, a straw vote is taken on the budget, which is before us, which is the mayor's budget proposal. And so the committees are usually asked to take a straw vote on that. Again, a straw vote is a recommendation to the full council. Similarly, a resolution adopted by a committee or both committees is a request to the mayor, right? It's usually a request to the administration to do something differently than what they have already done. My interpretation of your idea to take a vote on the superintendent's budget would be effectuated by voting on the mayor's proposed budget and then adopting a resolution that would support the superintendent's budget.
So if that's the cleaner way to do it, that's fine. I had heard differently over the course of this process about which budget was before us. That's fine. We can do it this way. I guess I would just say procedurally, they're straw votes. They don't have any binding nature to them. I think in a committee, we could take a straw vote on literally anything. But if this is the chair's prerogative, then In that case, Counselor Gentile, would you recommend, given that I've made my feelings clear, a vote of no on the mayor's budget plus the resolution, or a vote of yes on the mayor's budget plus the resolution? Like, what sends the message
Well, first,
more clearly?
I just want to clarify, it's not the finance chairman's prerogative. I mean, you know the charter as well as I do. We don't have the authority to increase the mayor's budget. Unfortunately, that's the charter that we live by. We can cut a recommendation from the mayor, but we can't increase it. So that's where I'm starting from. My suggestion would be, I heard what Counselor Baker was concerned about. He didn't want to vote no and not have any money in the budget for the school. So I think it would probably make sense to vote yes for the allocation, but with a further resolution to close the gap, and vote the recommendation of the superintendent.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Counselor Baker.
in programs, that's precisely what I was trying to get at, and I would be glad to offer that motion and at an appropriate time in our committee, because I think we need to vote it in our committee. This is substance committee. Also, it's preferable, I think, for resolutions to come through the committee process if we can, rather than wait for them to
It's
appear
fine.
on the floor of the committee of the whole. So if it's appropriate to move support for the mayor's allocation plus a resolution requesting the mayor to find the funds to increase it, to recommend, increase that budget to meet the superintendent's recommended allocation, I would support that. Now, I understand the school committee still has to add back in and, but I think the general sense here of the council is to try to respond to, I thought, a really important and eloquent presentation to us earlier, that this is an important need that we need to find a way to solve if we can. Now, the mayor still has to make the decision of what to do about that, but I would like to move that in committee if that's an appropriate motion at this point.
Can I,
Just to move it.
on the
Yeah, I don't think
timing,
you need to move it. Let me just get to all
Mr.
the people
Chairman,
who are
on the
in-
timing, I would wait until we take up docket item 114-25, which is $1,170,612 that is earmarked for the FY26 school budget, which will help to reduce the gap. I would suggest that we do that first, so we have a smaller gap.
That's fine. I'm perfectly happy to
And I
do that.
believe that the CFO is here to present the item, and I would like to see us get to that so we can vote on it, because I'm going to assume that everybody in the room is going to vote for it.
I agree with that. That's fine. I just want to make sure you understood that in our committee, I agreed with your process.
All right, we'll get to the votes. Don't worry, everybody. Counselor Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to, again, try to answer the questions from Counselor Grossman. I think I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here, but I felt like we resolved all the procedural questions 3 years ago. So I think I'm just trying to restate this. Again, in this meeting, substantively before us, at some point, we need to vote one way or another on a straw vote that is going to send it on to the next phase of the process in committee of the whole. Whether it's a yes vote or a no vote, does not matter. We just need to have some sort of vote on that. And you can look in your heart and decide how you wish to express your opposition to that number. But the thing that we're voting on is the number, the dollar amount in the allocation from the mayor. It is nothing else. I would definitely welcome a resolution after that point. I think for me, expressing no would be to vote no on the allocation number. That's how a lot of us did it 3 years ago. I don't think that, again, in this room, it has no effect. In the next phase, it does have an effect. You do not want to vote no in the next phase because that's actually taking money away. But in this phase, if you want to vote no to send a message, I think there's nothing wrong with that, certainly procedurally. And then after that, I think it'd be great to vote on resolutions expressing our opinions on the actual proposal from the school committee and the superintendent. I think that would be perfectly fine. But again, what we're voting on just substantively to get it to the next phase of the process is yes or no, do you agree with the dollar amount proposed from the mayor to allocate to NPS? Or you can abstain. Thank you.
So in your opinion, no means no.
That's my take in this room.
Counselor Mickley.
Yeah, so I actually have a different take. So I think no and yes both can be misrepresented and misunderstood. And to me, the clearest way to send the message is to simply abstain. So assuming that most people either felt like Counselor Grossman felt like before she spoke, but now all are aligned with her after she spoke. To me, the abstain plus the resolution sends the clearest message, because if someone just looks at the vote, like Counselor Baker was saying, sees no, then, people can interpret that we want less funding. If people just see the yes vote and don't see the resolution, then they might think, oh, we're aligned as committees with the mayor's allocation. If people see abstained, then it's going to cause them to look further. And that's when the resolution has a greater chance of being seen by more people. This is simply a messaging question, not a substantive question, but I feel that abstain is the strongest message, ironically. But question to Chair Gentile and Chair Krinsman, I'm a member of both committees, so what do you think? That's the most effective way to send that message.
In my opinion, no means no. I think the sentiments of people are going to be known. I think folks are speaking on their feelings. I think whether they speak in favor of or against the mayor's allocation is going to probably be clear before they say yes or no or abstain. My suspicion, Ms. Lemieux and Mr. Yo are very smart people. I think they're listening to what folks are saying, and I think they will be able to interpret the votes appropriately. Councilor Gentile, do you have a different
I think the
opinion?
council from Ward 5 hit the nail on the head when he said, you got to figure out what makes the most sense for you. I mean, you can make the case for yes, no, abstaining. So it's really what you think will be most effective. But I really think we need to get to 114.25 so we can get that $1,170,000 into the school budget for next year. And then we can talk more about the actual vote on the school budget. But let's get to that point.
I agree.
Next, I have Councilor Malachy.
Thank you, and sorry to disagree with my colleague, Councilor Mickley here, but I think the best way to send a message of no is to vote no. But I actually had, if you'll pardon me for going back to sort of the substantive questions as opposed to the procedural, I wanted to understand just how bad the situation is with the circuit breaker, because as I read your Superintendent Nolan's memo, I had always been under the impression that we got 75% reimbursement from the state. But hope that wasn't me.
Sorry.
It sounds like it's only on the amount for a student, like student by student, it's only on the amount over $52,000 and something. So when you say, first of all, when we talk about, we're not sure if it's going to be 75% this year or not, is that because the state is just flat out not even doing the 75% on the amount over the base number?
That's right.
Okay, so that's one level of underfunding.
That's transportation.
That's transportation. Are we getting, I thought the transportation was 40%.
So each year the percent allocations are decided. They are not both fully funded this year.
Right. And that's something, they pick a percent that applies to every community in the
Correct.
state. And they say this year, because of
That's
state
right.
budget, we're only going to do
Yep,
X percent for transportation and X percent for the out of district tuition.
correct.
And they're only of these categories of spending, they're only reimbursing the amount that is sort of out of pocket payments for out of district tuition. They're not reimbursing for anything that we pay for in the school system. Is that right?
Well, for services in the school system, it's over a certain amount of money that is spent.
Okay, and does the same threshold apply, the 52,000 and
Yes.
change?
Yes.
Whether it's paid
Yes.
as in-house expenses or out of district
That's correct.
tuition? Okay, so, and that percentage this year, we expect to be what? The number that should be 75, it's going to be, or I'm getting mixed up here. Is the 75% for transportation and the 40% is for tuition? Or the other way around?
75% reimbursement for tuition,
Tuition.
40% for transportation.
Okay, So, and this year, the state is going to, instead of doing 75, they're going to be doing what?
75
They are going to be. doing 75.
tuition, but not for transportation.
Not for transportation, okay.
Mhm.
And, but it's only on the amount per student over 52,000. So the effective rate is what?
The effective rate.
Like if you, given that they're not covering the first $52,000 for anybody, is there like kind of an effective rate that we get reimbursed?
Good evening. So it's a calculation for every student. So we're actually doing our claims now. So that threshold, that's why it's called the circuit breaker, trips beyond that $52,000. So every amount, every dollar above that, we get 75%. So it depends on that tuition. So the big reason the tuition is so important, most of our circuit breaker reimbursement is from our tuitions. So you'd have to do the calculation, but basically, if a tuition was $100,000, that's $48,000 above the circuit breaker threshold. We would get 75% of that $48,000. If there's transportation included, they would do that. The state first funds the tuition and instruction, which is that first bucket. And then whatever's left over, they fill with transportation. The last couple of years, transportation has only been in the low 40% because the tuition piece has been so high.
Okay.
We're filing our claims now in July for the reimbursement in FY26. So we don't actually know what that reimbursement is going to be. Our assumptions for FY25, we were actually approximately $400,000 short. We estimated a number of about $7.8 million, 7.9, and we showed on the screen, I think we're getting about $7.5 million. So we were short on that, on our estimate of what we would get for reimbursement. We actually don't know that reimbursement until that state budget is finally passed. And actually, they don't post it until about September, October.
Okay, so basically, money from this year's state budget is going to cover last year's expenses. They look at all the cities and towns across the state, pay the 75% of tuition related, and whatever's left over, they give everybody whatever percent the state can afford, I guess, for the transportation. And that is limited because why? Why don't they do the 40%?
Just funding.
It's just
It's just the funding that's available, that the state has made available.
Okay, so it's kind of like analogous to like the CPA fund. It's based on what's in the fund. Okay.
Perhaps.
Okay, and that walkthrough you had was helpful because I really wanted, and I still don't totally understand that chart, but are we I'm just trying to, I'm trying to understand not just this year, but like going forward, are we losing ground every year on the circuit breaker? Like, is it kind of the balance on average going down, 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 or?
So I can show you a graphic on this actually of what the funding and the actual cost looks like. And I also just want to let you know that we also have to serve students in private schools. So students who may just need speech services or what have you, we don't get any reimbursement generally for those because they're under the $52,000 threshold. So I just want to share that with you. So if I may share, I think I have I don't know if it's on this. If you give me a moment, I can bring up another slide deck for you that has that. But the short answer is yes. And that year that there was a 14% increase in tuitions for out-of-district tuitions, we used free cash again here in the city for a $700,000 infusion in one year and then again in a second. And now we're not sustaining that. So we are losing ground there. And it was known to be a bridge credit, but when you take it away, the tuitions don't go down as a result. So we're losing ground there, and we're also losing ground on the state reimbursement.
So at some point in the next whatever number of years, there could be like zero balance to even carry over in the circuit breaker fund?
Correct. And we really should get out of that business of doing that. What we should do is just balance our budget and spend the amount that we're given and not be carrying it forward. For example, if we had a reasonable amount of free cash at the end, right, school free cash, if you will, it should drop to free cash and go back to the city to be redistributed. We shouldn't have to rely on it to balance the budget for the subsequent year.
And we have does anyone have any control over the, like, what the tuition rates are for out-of-district tuition. Is that something that the state
No,
caps
it's
in any way?
really hard to get it from OSD every year and have it be so volatile.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a couple other people first. Okay, let me just talk about process here. I have three more counselors who have raised their hand. I'm going to get to all three of them. My suggestion at that point is going to be to pause for a moment, take up the other docket item. I will explain exactly what that other docket item means. I have a couple of questions in terms of how it impacts the budget situation. We'll get through that. We'll vote on the other item. Then we'll come back to straw votes on the school department budget and resolutions be in order at that time. Okay? Okay. Next counselor I have is Counselor Lobovitz, followed by Farrell. Counselor Lobovitz.
Again, procedural question. Will there be it seems like there won't be an opportunity. I'll wait for. It seems like there won't be an opportunity at programs and services to consider a resolution. Is that correct? So that any resolution after tonight would have to be brought to the city council as a whole?
In terms of the school department, yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, assuming that we conclude our work this evening, take a straw vote on the school department budget, which everyone hopes that we do.
On that
Yes, that's
assumption.
correct.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Thank you. Counselor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm kind of new at all of this, but very simply, I guess what I'd like to say is that when I have a plumber come to my house, I don't tell the plumber which tools that plumber should use to get the job done. I believe that plumber is a professional and knows what he or she is doing. I think we in Newton are extraordinarily fortunate to have hired Anna Nolan to come and make this system work. And while I think a lot of your questions are legitimate and interesting, the notion here is that I think we really have to make a decision about whether to support the budget that she needs to make this system work. I am, as I say, new at this, but my understanding is that we may need to make a decision by June 6th, that that's the end of the budget process. And to hand a budget into the mayor with some resolutions is about a weak a stand as I think we could possibly take. I agree with Councilor Grossman. I can do with a weekly trash pickup. I can do, to be perfectly honest, without filling every pothole in this city as fast as people want it filled. I can do without maintaining parks as highly as they would like to be maintained, if it means that we do what we need to do to make certain that our educational system is functioning as best as it possibly can. A resolution doesn't do that. We do have power, and it is hard power, and there are many people in the public who don't know this. We can cut the budget. And maybe we need to look at items and say, Mayor, there are items in this budget, while they're legitimate, need to be, if you can't give us the free cash to do this, then let's take it out of the budget. Now, do I think that that will infuriate a lot of people in this city? Absolutely. All those people who want their potholes filled and want to be able to go out and play on a field that's smooth and grass-fed. But this is a citywide issue. There's nobody in the city, grandparent, adult without kids, parents, teachers, we're all concerned about this. We don't judge our society by how many buildings we build or how many roads we have paved. We judge our society by how well we educate our kids and how well we take care of our senior citizens. And I hope whenever we come to a straw resolution or some kind of resolution, that it's with enough time to say to the mayor, we still have a week left. And we want to know what your response to this is. And if we don't get it, then I think we need to look at other alternatives, to be perfectly frank, about solving this educational problem. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, again, please, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please, appreciate it. You all set, Councilor Farrell? Councilor Farrell, you're all set? Okay, thank you. Just making sure. Councilor Baker.
Is it appropriate now to move to the item that Councilor Gentile indicated we should take up? I would like to have that discussion and vote and then
Yes.
come back to the budget and the resolution that might accompany it.
Yes, as I indicated, I think my intention would be to now pause our deliberation on the school department budget and to take up, let me read it into the record, item 114-25. This is the appropriation of $1,170,612 to reduce one-time Newton Public Schools expenditures. Ms. Lemieux, did you want to present this item? I know we have the memo which shows which things are for. If you want to present it, you're welcome to do that. Councilor Gentile.
Please make it clear in the record, it's for FY 2026 school budget items, not this year.
Okay, for the record, this is for FY '26 school budget items, not the current year. Ms. Lemieux.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you just read, this would be to take these one-time items more or less out of the superintendent's proposed budget that she brought forward to the school committee, fund these items with free cash. And so as Councilor Gentile said earlier, and I believe as you have also said, what this does is lower the gap from a gap of about $3.3 million where it is right now, lowers it to $2.2 million. And so it's a very important part of the process in helping us to get these numbers closer together.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lemieux. We all have the memo which shows the articulation of what specific items are funded by this. Again, it's for 1.17 million. I just want to ask of Dr. Nolan and Chair Bresky. At the City Council, folks know we approve a number, a school budget number. The budget number that the school committee approved was $296.3 million. Is it at least accurate to say that the $1.17 million worth of items included in this budget item are contemplated in the school committee approved budget? In other words, would this close the gap by $1.17 million?
It's slightly less than 1.17 million. It's 900. Do you have the exact number there, Dr. Nolan? $945,612 is the amount of items in line items in this docket item that are presently in the NPS operating budget for year 26. And to the conversation that Councilor Humphrey and I were having, you know, from my perspective, it would be wholly appropriate that these items stay in our budget and that free cash funding would simply be part of the funding of our NPS operating budget, not that it gets removed outside of our operating budget. And it's like $900,000 were never expensed. Services were never provided, funds were never provided. It just lives in the ether. And then next year, when you apply some percentage to our budget, it's going to be applying it to a number that's $945,000 short of reality. So the City Council can take that wherever they want.
Okay, so there's sort of two issues. One is the number that we are looking to approve for the FY '26 operating budget and the discrepancy between what the mayor has offered plus some number from this docket item and how far off of the school committee's approved budget that is. The second issue, of course, is how to calculate next year's budget, how much of an increase that is. I'd like to try and leave that aside for the moment, just to try and operate as a city council working on a specific number. I'm also hearing support from Dr. Nolan from Chair Bresky for this item. It's just a slight discrepancy in terms of how much it closes the gap, what $225,000 maybe, discrepancy of how much it closes the gap between what the docket item is and what you believe your budget accounts for. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Grossman. And again, sorry, we are on the item now, talking about the docket item and the proposed $1.17 million free cash allocation.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I know the answer, don't you worry.
Would it be in order to make a motion to amend this item that rather than the 1.17 million going to a non-lapsing account, that the 1.17 million go to account to be specified that is the equivalent of the school budget.
I don't know that we can do that. Counselor Gentile, do you have an opinion on whether that's within our authority?
I don't think so.
Counselor Baker?
I think we have the item before us. We can make a resolution about something, but the mayor's capacity to, an appropriation request has to come from the mayor. We don't have the authority to make an appropriation independent of that. So I don't think that's in order. I understand the purpose, but I don't think that's the vehicle that we can use. That's just my view.
Okay, some other ideas that I'll throw out. Can we make it contingent on changing the account designation, or if we really have to, subject to second call with the intention that we would like the account designation changed?
I think there are a variety of things that you can resolve to go with it, but I don't want to have any ambiguity about funding this item to come out of committee. At the committee of the whole, we can do a variety of things. But I do not want to be in a position of not having this committee, at least the Programs and Services Committee, of which I'm a member, vote for this item, which I think is an important addition to the school budget. I don't want to see them not have access to this funds for any contingency out there. They need to know that they've got this money, and I'd like to have them have the sense that our committee supports it. Now, what finance does is obviously a choice that you all have to make in that committee, but I would like to vote this so that we can get this off the table and then go back to the other item and figure out how we go forward from
All
there.
right, I see there are a lot of other hands, just to finish my thought. I don't want any ambiguity either, but I also don't want this group to be behind next year by another $945,612 times, the 3.6% increase.
Counselor Humphrey?
Yeah, I mean, certainly under the charter, we can't modify the accounts because otherwise that would give us the power to move any money to any account for anything. And we know we can't move around money in any budgetary stuff. So that technically, that's the mayor's appropriation power. I think the docket item is written pretty clearly that and the memo is clear that that the city administration intended for these to be for one-time projects. You may disagree with that, but clearly that is their intent, is that this will not live in the budget for future years. So I just don't, based on the text of the memo, I don't anticipate them changing their minds on that.
Counselor Gentile?
I agree with Council Humphrey, but more importantly to me is I think we need to understand the discrepancy in the numbers. This is the first that I'm hearing that the number is not 1,170,000. So can Chair Bresky explain why his number is at 945?
Yes, there's two line items included in that appropriation. One is $25,000 for a transportation efficiency consultant to look at our bus routes and try to help optimize those. And we would hopefully seek future financial benefits from that. That was not included in our operating budget. The second item is $200,000 of professional development that was not included in our operating budget, but that it was grant funded last year. So it's backfilling that grant funding.
So the number is you're saying that we should be approving is, what was it, 945?
Well, I think we would support the full 1.17 million.
Well, I would hope so, but go ahead.
But in terms of what would bridge the gap of our unfunded school committee budget, that number would be $945,000. The full $1.17 million would not bridge the gap. Only $945,000 of that would.
So what I'm hearing, just to sort of restate, is that there's support for the item and there's support for the item as is. But as the city council contemplates the school department budget, it should, or it should be aware that the superintendent and school committee's position is that the gap goes from $3.38 million to $2.44 million, not down to $2.2 million. Have I said that correctly?
Yes. I think so, yes.
Okay.
But I still think we should probably vote on the dollar amount that's in front of us, which is on the higher side, just in case. And if we need to, if we get further clarification, we need to change the number, we can certainly do that at committee of the whole.
Okay, so still discussing the item. I have Counselor Lobovitz.
Counselor Gentile asked the question I was going to ask, so thank you.
Okay, Counselor Mickley.
Yeah, just to follow up to Chair Gentile's question, just why and how were those numbers that are not part of the essential gap included? Was that from the mayor's request? Was that from the superintendent's request? Just so why and how were those numbers included if they weren't part of sort of the key gap items? Just where, in terms of process, how those came out, the 225.
So the idea, I think, was to find things that were one-time costs. So the transportation coordinator is something that could save us money in the future and is a one-time cost, that consultancy. The Thrive PD Day was one of those title grant funded scenarios, which we anticipated to be cut. We're not sure. So it was one of the plus parts of the level service plus. It was not already baked into our operating. And it is easier to find ongoing grant funding for professional development than it is other things. So I believe that was the rationale. That's why we offered it as such.
Ms. Lemieux, did you want to speak to that as well?
Thank you. Yes, just to be clear, we asked for the list of one-time expenditures in the budget so that we could reduce the gap. These are the 200 in particular was given to us as an item that was in the budget. There may have been some confusion on the part of the school department about that afterwards, but we asked for the list of money that was included in the budget.
Okay. So again, we're on item 114-25. Can I get a motion in programs and services? Counselor Oliver?
I'd like to move approval of this item in programs and services, please.
All right, Counselor Oliver has moved approval. Any discussion on that item? All right, in programs and services then, all those in favor of 114-25, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's unanimous. Chair Gentile?
Can I get a motion in finance?
Motion to approve.
Council Grossman has moved approval of the $1,170,612. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Motion passes unanimously, and there are 7 counselors here on finance, so that's 7-0.
All right, well done, people. All right, back to the school department budget. Let's now contemplate this. Counselor Bixby.
Thanks. So procedurally, listening to the conversation by my colleagues, I do feel like there is a common sense in the room of our feelings about this matter. And so I would encourage us to think about a common answer to the vote tonight. And I think there's an opportunity for a resolution that might discuss fully funding the schools to the budget level that is requested and was voted on by the school committee, so that I personally do not feel like I can vote yes to the mayor's allocation, the number that's in our budget. So I would like to vote no this evening on that question and that straw vote, and then vote yes on a resolution that would discuss fully funding the school committee's budget item. So that's what I feel, that's what my heart is telling me, that's what I feel most comfortable with. And I would encourage us to think about something that would send a message. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Baker.
So I'm going to move the mayor's budget in programs and services, and members can vote no or not, but I'm going to support it for the reasons I've indicated earlier. I don't want to leave on the table an implication that the mayor's allocation is not going to be funded. Counselor Humphrey articulated the problems we can get into if that's the case. And I need to remind that any appropriation requires 13 affirmative votes of the council ultimately to pass. So I think we need to send up at least to the full council the mayor's recommendation, and then I would move after that vote a resolution to support closing the gap so as to fund the amount that the superintendent has indicated is necessary. I'm sorry, my computer is in disarray, or at least I'm in disarray with my computer, so I can't get to the numbers. But I think the point has been well made that there's support among us to try and figure out a way to do something along these lines. Now, how that's done is a matter that I think is up to the administration. I'm not prepared to go into recommending cuts in other places in the budget to do it, because I don't think that we are at that point. I think the question for me in the resolution is to indicate that there is support in the council for the superintendent's recommendation, and then leave it to the administration to continue to reflect on how and whether that gap can be closed. So, but that's a two-stage process. So I think the first stage is to move, at least in programs and services, the mayor's allocation for the school budget.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Farrow.
This is just a question about timing. When is the earliest time that we could present the budget to the mayor with this resolution? And if the budget isn't presented until June 6th with the resolution, what power does that resolution have other than just, we'd like you to think about this, Mayor? Thank you.
My understanding, and I'll let Chair Gentile answer for himself, there are two things. The committee of the whole officially passes the resolutions, and those go immediately to the mayor, not after completion of deliberation of the budget. The second thing is that the administration is in the practice of listening to our deliberations and usually preparing a response to resolutions that they know are coming. And so their turnaround is usually pretty quick. They are usually ready to respond to them as soon as the committee of the whole adopts them. But Chair Gentile, if you have a different response,
May
I'll
I
let you answer.
finish that in response to that, or?
The committee of the whole is starting next week. It usually takes 2-3 nights. And so we will be done well in advance of the June 6th date that you mentioned, well in advance.
So when we're done and presented to the mayor can wait until June 6th to give us an answer? Or is there any way we can suggest to the mayor that we want an answer before that? My concern is that once June 6th passes, the budget process is over. And we have no ability to adjust our recommendation and resolutions to the mayor.
Well, we typically wait to receive all the responses back from the mayor before we take final action on the budget and then send it to her. So you will know what her position is on all of these resolutions before you're asked to vote on the final budget.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry about being new, not understanding.
We love news, no problem. Mr. Chairman, can you at some point I know Councilor Baker made the motion, but I know you have the number right in front of you for both programs and services and finance. Can you read the mayor's number into the record?
I will. Yes.
Thanks.
Yep. Councilor McLean.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with Councilor Bixby's point about the importance of having common language to express common sentiments. And I share your sentiments, Councilor Bixby, so I will follow your lead and vote no on the budget and yes on the resolution. Thank you.
All right, I see no other hands. So we're now going to take a straw vote on the school department budget. The mayor's proposed allocation, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, is $292,963,623. Okay, so that is the number on which the straw vote is taken. You can vote yes, no, or abstain. You can decide what that means, but those are your options. In programs and services, all those in favor of the mayor's allocation, please say aye.
Aye.
Show me the hands so we can record those. Councilor Baker, Councilor Lobovitz. All right, those opposed. 3, 6. All right, so it's 2-6 for no. Chair Gentile?
Fine. In finance, can I get a motion on the mayor's budget? And I'll move approval. All those in favor, please raise your hands. 1, opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1 in favor and 6 opposed. Are there any resolutions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer a resolution of programs and services, the substance of which is to support closing the gap so that to enable the superintendent's recommended budget to be funded. I think that's the thrust of what we've heard. I don't know what the number is, to be honest, but that's the idea.
Okay, I will say if my math is correct, could be wrong. If my math is correct, the gap between the school committee approved budget and what we have approved, what the mayor has proposed and what we have approved in the docket item is $2,443,023. Someone can check me or tell me that's wrong or tell me that's right. But hearing no objections, we're going to go with that number.
Does
that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Chair Bresky?
Good.
Excuse me. Just so you have it, Chair Krinsman, the school committee approved budget was $296,352,258.
Right. Okay. My math is the mayor's budget of 292,963,623 plus $945,612 from the item we just approved. And I believe that leaves a gap of $2,443,023. Let's leave it to
I believe you are correct, Mr. Chairman.
a voice of reason out in the audience. Did you hear that? Thank you, Ms. Lemieux. Are there, Councilor Gentile?
I think the intent is clear for Councilor Grossman's motion, which is whatever the exact dollar of the gap is that the mayor appropriate enough money to fully close the gap. Is that fair, Councilor Grossman?
Yes, and I think that's very much in line with what Councilor Baker moved as a resolution, programs and services as well.
Okay, are there other we'll take a vote on the resolutions in a moment. Are there other comments? All right, I'm just I haven't really made my thoughts clear. I guess I voted on the budget, but I just want to quickly say that I think the superintendent is tasked with composing the budget she needs to effectively run our schools and educate the children. I know there's a thought that perhaps she should budget to an allocation, but I don't necessarily subscribe to that, at least not in her ask. What we have before us is not really a huge difference in terms of percentage wise. It's a solvable problem. It's real dollars, but we're not far off in terms of percentage. I appreciate the superintendent and the school committee advocating for what their need. I believe that we have the funds this year to meet those needs. We still have to deal with next year, and the year after, but we do have a year or two to try and figure that out. I believe that starting with COVID, I'm concerned that essentially we have balanced the budget on the backs of the children. I do not like that. I believe that we have hurt the children currently in the schools, and I think we should fund this budget now because those are the kids that are in school now. So I voted no on the department budget because I believe it's insufficient this year. And just as programs and services did last night, I'm hesitant to support any use of free cash that does not help resolve the discrepancy. That includes the item that we're going to be taking up next, which I'm hopeful that will hold until the situation is resolved. So I'm going to support the resolution because I think it's where I'd like to see us go. Councilor Baker.
Just let me add one other comment. I think that To go to Councilor Farrell's question, this is a resolution that I suspect is going to gain strong support in both committees. It's not yet at the committee of the whole, but part of what the chair of Programs and Services has indicated is that it's important to provide early signals to the administration about where the members of the council are. So I think the resolution at this stage, even though it's not in committee of the whole, coming out of two committees will be an important signal. And I think that's why it's important to pass this tonight. So I hope everyone will vote for it.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Any other? Councilor Albright.
No, I can't vote on because I'm not on either one of these committees, but, and I didn't say this before when we were voting on the 1.1 million, because lest what I'm about to say would argue against voting for it. But it feels to me like some of the things that are in these one-time, the mayor's one-time costs are mental gymnastics. I mean, anybody that thinks that science consumables is a one-time cost in a school system, I don't know what that means. Anybody that thinks curriculum development is a one-time cost in a school system, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm just hoping that we can send the message to the mayor that we need some more mental gymnastics to find whatever the number is, $1 million of one-time cost to enable her to feel comfortable using free cash to fund the gap. Because it's clear that there's been a lot of mental gymnastics and that has made her feel comfortable with where she is. And she can go a little bit deeper and find some more comfort.
Thank you. Please, ladies and gentlemen. I noticed I gave a nice little speech and there was no applause, but don't worry about that. I appreciated the indulgence. No, I'm just kidding. Please, Councilor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. I understand and in fact agree with the notion that free cash should probably generally be used for one-time costs. I think this is an exception, and I think it would be possible for the mayor to say, I don't agree with this and generally would not allow this to happen. But it's clear that the sense of the community, including the council, is that we make this exception. I would caution any future administrations to think very carefully about doing this. But I think it's critical right now to allow the superintendent and the school committee to move forward and keep this process that they have begun over the past 2 years moving forward. Thank you.
Councilor Mickley.
Yeah, one other point on the one-time funds. Obviously agree with most of the points made earlier this evening about the value of funding staff, teachers, services over stuff. I think that's all pretty clear. I think we're all behind that. But one other point I want to mention is the risk of using one-time funds that's talked about is the risk of future layoffs. But if we don't use the one-time funds this year, it's a guarantee of layoffs right now. So we're opposed with the decision of a risk of future layoffs or just committing to layoffs right now. And I think it's obvious that we'd rather take that chance and deal with it in the future than have our students in the schools guaranteed to have diminished services right now. So I think the choice is pretty clear to use these funds to fund the budget. Thank you.
All right, I see no other comments. So again, there's a resolution proposed asking the mayor to bridge the gap between funding already allocated, her proposed school department budget, and what the school committee has passed as their approved budget. Again, I think that number is $2.44 million, but essentially the resolution is asking the mayor to bridge that gap using free cash. Councilor Baker.
I didn't frame it in terms of a funding source. I said
Okay.
the bridge gap.
Omit those final 3 words that I said.
Okay.
I was on point up until that point, right?
You're just
I nailed
superb.
it.
You
Okay, I
nailed it.
just misplaced the period. My fault.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of the resolution in programs and services, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's unanimous. Chair Gentile?
Can I get a motion in finance? Councilor Grossman?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? and I will be abstaining. So the vote is 6 in favor, no in opposition, and 1 abstention. Passes.
Okay. That concludes our deliberations on the budget. We have one more item. But that's our work on the school department budget.
I'm going to move hold on the item in finance.
All right, so let me introduce the item.
Sure.
And then if programs and services wants to hold it as well, that would be in order. So it is item 122-25. This is the appropriation of $150,000 for library data wiring from June 30th, 2024 certified free cash. Ms. Mercurio, I know you're online. Do you want to, and you've waited a long time, I appreciate that. Even understanding, it looks like there may be motions to hold this item. Do you want to speak about it before we act?
Like to hear.
Hi, good evening. You have all had a long night, so if you want to hold this item, I completely understand. In the very back of your meeting materials, there's a color sheet that explains what the project that we're hoping to achieve at the Newton Free Library with data wiring is. But I'll leave that up to you if you'd like me to continue on with this item or save it for another time.
Councilor Baker?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have a little explanation about this and the time sensitivity of and what the impact of a hold would be, because ultimately this is not part of the budget deliberation. This is part of our regular process. So if finance moves to hold it, I guess the council can't take it up until finance acts. But I would like to know more substantively about the item and what the impact of a hold would be.
Ms. Mercurio?
Sure thing. In short, I would say the library building was built in 1991, and as beautiful as it is, it was built before the architects were thinking about how computer use and the advent of the internet would reshape everything that we do, how we work, and certainly the expectations of the public coming into the library 30 years later. While we've added data wiring over the years at the library, we have a lot of spaces still running on original Cat3 wiring. And every visitor who comes to the library, whether it's their cell phone, their laptop, their smartwatch, uses the internet when they enter the building. We've made a lot of improvements of trying to upgrade our equipment, but without the infrastructure of this wiring being up to date, there's really strong limitations on what we're able to offer the public and the staff for reliable internet service with fast connection speeds. So this project will help us replace and add wiring to bring our wires up to date. So we'll have a total of 78 new lines in the building. And this will allow us to be able to have connectivity in our meeting rooms and our study rooms. Similar to what you have on the screen in front of you in City Hall, we'll be able to have that in our meeting rooms at the library. And we're a popular destination for people to hold sessions over there and students to study with us. So that's the quick synopsis of what this project will do, but it really paves the way for the future of technology at the library.
Thank you. Councilor Baker?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just what is, again, the time sensitivity? I understand the policy behind it, but is there some reason this has to be voted now as opposed to be deferred? I just need to understand if there's a construction cycle or anything that's implicated here.
So the funding is based on the free cash at the end of the year. So that is a budget opportunity to fund this. But in terms of launching the project, we're waiting to have the available funds to make these changes happen in the building.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Humphrey.
Hold on, Mr. Chairman. If the substantive committee wants to take this up, that's fine, that's your right. But finance, this was never intended to be on the agenda. I'll take responsibility for it. Tonight was supposed to be about school department and school department budget. Never intended to take up anything else. So can I at least get a motion from my committee to hold the item, and when you're done with it, we'll be happy to take it up.
Sure. Councilor Grossman?
Motion to hold in finance. And Ms. Mercurio, I really want to thank you for your incredible patience and for explaining this. Please understand that I care a lot about your work and the library's work. But I definitely think hold is appropriate, not just for the reasons that Counselor Gentile mentioned, but until we have resolution on the other really pressing budget matters before us. So motion to hold.
Thank you. In finance, all those in favor of hold, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Abstention. So the motion passes 6-0 to 1, and we are adjourned for the evening. Thank you.
I forget if we technically need to hold the budget items. So can I just get a motion to hold all the budget items? All right, Counselor Oliver has moved hold on all the budget items. All those in favor of hold the budget items, say aye. All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those are held. Okay, so finance, you all set. Counselor Humphrey, go back to your programs and services, the library item.
Yeah, I suppose it doesn't matter a whole lot now. I am on both committees and anyway, but yeah, I do think this is an important item. I was glad that we got to at least hear some from Director Mercurio. Again, when we're talking about Cat3 wiring, that's from the early 90s. So we're not talking about like we need the latest and greatest that just came out this year because we want to replace what came out last year. And, you know, our soon to be departed IT director on the city side, Joe Mulvey, is always emphasizing about security and things like that. And we did do some, you know, security projects for the library, cybersecurity projects for the library previously. But again, I mean, I think this is an important thing. I understand the sentiment in the room is not in that direction right now, or at least, but I hope people will take it seriously in the coming weeks. And I'm just glad that we got to hear an answer on the procurement timetables, because that's what I was going to ask as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Oliver.
Again, I'm going to just rabbit a little bit of what I heard from Counselor Grossman and maybe go one step further, perhaps a tiny step. Holding this item has absolutely nothing to do with the item itself tonight. We simply have the same question in front of us that I believe it was Counselor Kalis who said it very well and very simply. I'd rather see some more teachers on the job than some wires in the library. And I'd like one decision before we make the next. That's all I'm saying. I think holding this item tonight is no harm, no foul. Thank you.
So in programs and services, Counselor Oliver has moved hold. Any discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions? All right, the item is held. Thank you. With that, we are adjourned.